This week we're going to talk about something that I feel we talk about abuse, but we don't touch on. We're going to talk about the things that you should not say to someone who's going through abuse, who's either living with it or has just left an abusive situation. I mean, have you ever been shocked by the admission of abuse? As they being the victims by one of your friends, or perhaps even witnessed them being bullied by their spouse, and you thought, no, this shouldn't be happening. But, we all know someone who is dealing with abuse, but we sometimes pretend it's just a problem that can be solved. And so, hang in there, everything is going to be okay, you are strong, and blah, all those things that we say. But nope. I think abuse is not a problem that we're looking to solve. Abuse, like I say, is a deliberate choice by the perpetrator to control, inflict pain on the victim for a perceived lack of disrespect, that they deserve punishment for misstepping, or just plain old meanness because they can get away with it. I mean, who's going to hold me accountable? Certainly not you. So just because they can, they do it. So today we're going to talk about it. When a victim opens up to you, or when you notice that they're in an abusive situation, don't do these things. Don't say things like, why did it take you so long to speak up or leave? No.
Hello, that's Amma from the podcast Conversations with Amma. I met Amma on the same site I met Ndombi. Remember Ndombi? If you don't, you definitely need to listen to episode 12. So go back and do that. So on the podcast Conversations with Amma, I find Amma's take on the role of the church on matters gender-based violence and marital abuse really eye-opening. So guys, I will be having a conversation with Amma, get it, on her experiences and her podcast. Kama kawaida, there are some sound glitches as with anything recorded over the internet. The first half is particularly glitchy on this episode, but don't worry, you can still get what Amma is talking about. Hello there, and welcome to the Cocoa Butter Junkie podcast. I'm Michelle, and this is my podcast. This is a podcast on the everyday reflections and experiences of a Kenyan woman. It is my examination of life living through mental health issues, grief, growing up, aka kicking and screaming into adulthood, the experiences of being a woman in Kenya, making friends as an adult, struggles with faith, and a bunch of other topics. Thank you for listening.
My name is Amma Bartman. I'm Ghanaian, and I work at 9 to 5 as an assistant registrar in a university. And then I like to do a lot of different businesses. So I have a small side marketing business where I help people with creating their logos and their social media presence. I have a farm, and then I am an aspiring author. I'm trying to write a book, and I have a podcast. So the podcast is a passion of mine, which stems from my own experiences and the need, the things that I learned along my personal journey, and the need to educate people about it. Because I realized that even though I knew the experiences that I was going through, it didn't fully make any sense because I didn't have the knowledge. So the podcast stems from the passion to help, and so it can make it easy for them through their journey. So yes, that's me.
Okay. So your podcast is mainly about abuse, eh?
So it's not about just abuse, it's about some of my personal experiences, right? But abuse is very dear to my heart. So I began with that. I have other experiences. I just want to, have this whole season talk about it and then move on to something else, right?
Okay.
And for me, I grew up in a high conflict home. My dad was abusive towards my mom for many, many years. Initially, I know that as a kid. But I think my first eye opener was around 9, 10, thereabouts. And it got worse and worse from there. And at a young age, you know, you just don't have the power to be able to intervene, right? You know, a lot of parents assume that children are oblivious. They are not oblivious. And then they tend to, you know, much as they hated what was happening at home, I talk about, you know, subconscious trauma and the patterns that it creates in our minds. So as much as I tried to run away from it full circle, I came back into an abusive situation. I didn't ask for it. And the point is, it's just subconscious. So, you know, I talk about racial bypassing and generational curses and patterns that run in family. And we pray about it for years and years and years and years, but we don't do the shadow work to uproot the seed that has been sown. Because what it is when trauma runs through families, patterns are created, and then everybody going through that family just takes that pattern, whether they like it or not. It's not something that they try, so it becomes a pattern. But children are born with their attitudes and characters, but then they are also shaped by the society and the experiences that they go through. So when the shaping happens, and then they take those patterns, and then we say, oh, it's a generational curse. But then it can be uprooted by unlearning and relearning better habits.
So when did it start for you?
The thing with abuse is it starts as very small. Obviously, there are little signs which points out to you that, oh, the person has done this. And then it escalates. Sometimes it will not shoot till after 10 years. But mine started quite early. My partner was an extremely given person. Nor, you know, I just felt like by the nature of the person that I am, I was enough. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm a giver, I'm this. So the more I pour into the person, they will learn to pour into me. But it didn't happen like, it doesn't happen like, maybe it was naivety and the need to. I remember saying in one of my podcasts that my dad would tell me things like, oh, you're just like your mother. Those are 4 words, but subconsciously, I already felt criticized because you're just like your mother. The mother I see you criticizing, the mother I see you trying to hate, the mother I see you talking negatively to people about. I'm saying that, so for me, it's little incident. And that's the thing with abuse. You cannot tell until it becomes a pattern, right? You can't use one incident unless it's, you know, a very huge incident of anger and the person slaps you around and drags your hair and all of those things. But even that, you usually find that victims will go back because the person will say, oh, I got extremely angry and it's not going to happen again and I apologize, and then they will love bomb you and try to make it look like it's one-off until another incident happens again, right? So when it comes to abuse, you have to deal with patterns, right? Instead of one incident. So I can't even say that, oh, I can tell when it started. It's just a series of events that escalated up until the point where it was happening every other week, or sometimes every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and you could never win, you know. And then you begin to Google, is this behavior normal? I mean, for you to Google, you know, an experience with someone that you live with and say they love you, that means like it's gone overboard, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So so there was no way you could have told pre-marriage that this person was abusive. There was no way you could have known.
No, you can never tell. You can never tell. Also because you know, pre-marriage is modeled on love, is modeled on forgiveness and compromise and understanding. So if, for instance, an event happened pre-marriage and they got angry and they said mean stuff to you and they said, oh, I was really so upset, you know how much I love you and I apologized and all of those things, you're assuming it's one-off. And there's this lady whose husband never never showed any signs of abuse. They were married for 15 years. Here's what happened. They're driving somewhere, having a conversation. They got missing, and then in trying to find their way back, so the wife suggests, let's ask. The man gets offended and starts slapping her, and from that day, that was it. Right? If you had asked saying that the husband would ever hit her, she would have told you never. But after he hit her that day, abuse went on for the next 22 years after she left the marriage.
Oh, wow.
You understand?
So when did it start to get really bad for you?
Oh, maybe 5 years into the marriage, and they say things to you that are one of, for me, the turning point for me was the day I decided that, you know what, you've got to start living for yourself and trying to find your own path.
So at this point in the story, Amma explains that she got a new help for the house, and somehow the help ended up blowing up the fuse on the fridge, which brought up an incident with her partner. She wasn't in the house when the fridge blew up, but then it ended up with a blowback on her.
I wasn't even at home when it happened, and the inference was, oh, you're lazy, so you've gone to get help, and they've come to damage my goods, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I really apologize. I didn't even know what's going to happen, and I'm sure that the girl doesn't even understand the dynamics of these things. So maybe it's a learning experience for us to explain to them better when they come. So, so I knew he was angry, and I knew I was going to bear the brunt for it, so I was ready for it. In our local language, he said to me, oh, you are a curse and a burden because of a refrigerator, right? I will throw it out my house and all of those things. I was like, you know what? I went that day, and I think that day was the day that broke me. I made a mental note to heal myself. And so it's just a series of things that happen. Even though you made that conscious decision that you're in this by yourself, every time they do something, it hurts and it piles up. It hurts and it piles up. And the thing is, they never take responsibility for the words and actions they do. They always say, you made me do it. You got me to get angry. You don't think about how the words are affecting you and breaking you down. Now, after saying all those things to someone, you expect intimacy. You still expect care and attention. You expect that everything will remain the same, but you keep on forgetting that the very person that you are breaking down is how do you take someone who's broken down? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're just watching and observing it. They can sense that you are holding back. So the next thing they will accuse you of is, oh, you are sleeping with someone else, or you are talking to people, or you've changed. Meanwhile, they know very well that they are catalysts of change, but they will never take responsibility for it.
Yeah. So when it was happening, did you ever tell anyone, like your family, your pastor, your friends?
It took me a while before I told my mom about it. Now, funny thing is, even though my mom went through abuse, she didn't believe me. And we are traditionally told, when you have a problem in your marriage, don't talk to anyone about it, pray about it, talk to your partner about it. But if the partner is not even helping you in any way, how do you deal with it? So, all those difficulties are, you're trying to navigate what you know vis-a-vis against what you're told. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you're also protecting yourself. If you're going to say, are you going to be the bad person? So you are wrestling with all these emotions, It's hard. It's a lonely road. Yeah.
What about your friends? Did they believe you?
It's a lonely road. I never told any of my friends till maybe a year ago. And yes, they speak to me. They even tried to speak to him about it. And the thing is, he would say things like, "Oh, I'm just joking. I was just angry." There's nothing like I was just angry when you consistently hit someone every single day of their life. And they tell you about it and you don't get down. The only reason you are saying that is because now other people are questioning why you're doing that.
So during this period, what were you saying to yourself?
Oh, my absolute crunch was God and prayer. I used to pray a lot. I mean, even if I couldn't cry, for me, prayer is a relief. Crying was a relief, you know. And just the Bible, and then researching because I felt like the more I understood what was happening, the better it gave me the options and the decisions and choices to make. How do I empower myself? So that's how I started learning about saving and business and doing things for myself. Because if I was going to invest in the business, I wanted to establish it properly, I needed how to create a logo. That's when I learned how to create logos. That's when I learned to build invoices. That's when I learned about marketing. That's when I started learning about personal branding. That's when I decided that every year I will learn and get 2 certificates for myself because I needed skills so that any job that would come, I could take on because I needed to be financially independent. Those were the things that I used to occupy my time, and that's how come I became knowledgeable in anything that I could find that was of interest to me. If it was a free course, I will take it. If it was a course that a little that I could pay for, subsidized, I will take it. You get what I mean? So I filled my times with knowledge and reading the Bible and doing things that would empower me because I felt like I had as much money as I could get, you know?
Did you finally get help from somebody else, or did you just finally help yourself?
Oh, actually, I went to our pastor, and that's why I sent them, you're learning everything that then I started documenting the things that were happening to me. And so I sent it to them, and they called me. I was leaving the house, and he looked at me, and he was like, "Oh," I was wearing a very long dress, long sleeve, covered to my neck, and he said to me, "Oh, he's probably sure I'm going to sleep around." I didn't say anything. I just walked out, and I went to my pastor's house. And so when I got there, he went to my office, and they said I wasn't in. So he started texting me that if I come back home, he was going to kill me. I should pack my things and leave the house. At that point, I was really tired, right? So my pastor and his wife overheard part of the conversation. They said, "This is not safe. Just go home, pack your things, and go to your mom for some time, and then we'll talk about it." But when I was leaving, I was like, "Look, until he gets help and he gets therapy, I'm really not stepping back in space because I've not had any peace of mind." And I needed to make that decision for myself because I also didn't want to pass that on to my children. For me, no, my children were a major force. I wasn't going to put them in that environment. I was in that environment. It never helped me. It didn't do anything. It brought me right back until I faced my own demons. I got therapy. I'm a therapist. I have to face my own because I believe that I'm also responsible for the role I played because I allowed it. You understand? I can't say that he did everything to me, but I also allowed it, to happen, and I didn't do anything about it up until the point where he felt he was entitled. And I had to accept that behavior. So why I played that role? What were the choices I had that I didn't take? And what were the boundaries that I had to set that I didn't set? So if I had set those boundaries, it probably wouldn't have even gone up to that point where it will start. And they would have probably left me alone because they will realize that I'm not the bait they want. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but don't you think maybe it would have gotten worse and worse and worse because maybe he would have seen like you trying to empower yourself and then made the abuse worse and worse?
So as I tried to empower myself, getting a job was a problem. Having my own finances and business was a problem. Little things, actions, or I had to account for my time. I had to account for who I spoke to. I had to account for emails. I had to account for phone minutes and all of those things. I had to account for going, you know. It's just out of risk that I let you know where I am, right? Not because I have to. There's a difference,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what sort of abuse was it? Was it just physical, or was it mental and emotional?
The emotional, the verbal, psychological, mental, physical, gaslighting, eventually physical, because at some point they want a reaction from you, but you're quiet. You're not saying anything. So it gets physical, right? And then they will say, well, if you hadn't done that, I wouldn't have hate you. But there's no excuse,
Yeah. So in your podcast, there's an episode you do about things that you shouldn't say to someone who has undergone abuse. I don't know. Maybe give us the top 5 things you shouldn't say or do to somebody who has been through abuse.
Okay, so why didn't you say anything? It's not that easy. Are you sure there's 2 sides to a story? You shouldn't say that. Because see, the thing is, this game, and it's a power game. So the abuser will make it look like they are the victim, right? And then pray about it doesn't fix it.
Yeah.
Do you understand what pray about it doesn't fix it? Oh, are you sure you didn't provoke him? What kind of provocation will make, you get what I mean? What kind of provocation will make someone, do things that are mean and hurtful to someone constantly, like I said, and then, sometimes the stories don't make sense. So you have to tell them that doesn't make sense, because it doesn't. They are aware that it doesn't. If they haven't asked you for a solution, don't try to find one for them.
Okay.
Sometimes if they haven't asked you for a solution, don't try to find one for them, because sometimes in telling you the story, they are healing and identifying their own solutions. And when you break the pattern, they have to go back and relive the horrors again.
Yeah.
People are coming from a good space. They feel like that's what they should tell you. But what they don't understand is that this is not our situation. You get me?
Yeah.
Because one, abuse is used power and control and dynamics. The perpetrator always comes off as, they couldn't possibly, I don't know if you watched some of the Madea movies. There were classic abusers in there who didn't look like they were abusers, but they were.
Yeah.
And it takes sometimes a discerning person or someone who understands the dynamics of power and control to see through the acts. You know what I mean? Or sometimes they will push you, on the inside, push you and push you and push you. And then when you come out, they already turn on the triggers. You say something and you go bonkers, and they are like, yeah, I was just kidding. But what everybody hasn't seen is the prodding that's been going on in private. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a complex situation. So when you ask them why they didn't leave, you are trivializing the whole situation to just taking your bag and just walking. It doesn't work like that.
What should somebody say instead of like providing solutions or like asking?
Listen.
Okay.
Listen and say, you know what? I'm glad you told me about this. How do you feel? What would you want to do? Is it okay if you do a therapist? Because you see, sometimes there are underlying issues. So you direct them to a therapist and just, hang out with them, because it's the thing with abuse is it makes you anxious, makes you afraid, and every simple thing, such as even going to sit in your car and going to the mall, it's a big deal because you're anxious. Yes, because maybe perhaps you had gone to the cinema by yourself and your spouse had gotten angry and had, it had led to an episode. The body remembers.
Yeah.
So immediately that your mind accepts and adapts to the fact that you are going to go out. You might not even know what it is. That's why sometimes someone will say, oh, I can't come again. Something came up. They might be lying. But because of the anxiety, their body refuses to, they decide not to go again. So patience is key. Understanding, that's why I do the podcast, so people can understand and relate. The thing is, the abuse will change you. The abuse will change you. So to unlearn everything you've been through to become the person that you were at first or you were supposed to be, it will take time. Body remembers the pain and then it forgets everything that you are learning. It's a journey of self-love and conscious effort in healing and growing to the point where you can even identify the triggers before they come so you can be happy, you know, without all those things drawing you back into those experiences again.
So can we talk about your mental health during this period? Before you got the help, what was your self-esteem like? What was your confidence like?
It was hard for me, even though I was still being confident and everything. I was always thinking, what would he say? What would he do? How will I have to approach it? So everything was never about me. I always had to put other people first. So I took responsibility for what I didn't have to take responsibility. And as my children grow up, I am there for them. But sometimes I get emotionally overwhelmed because then I don't have anyone to take care of me. You're supposed to be a mother, you're supposed to be a wife, you're supposed to be working, you're supposed to be a friend, you're supposed to be a sister. You're just wearing all these hats. Deep down, you're just waiting. You know? And so I do things for myself. So I will dress myself every Sunday. That was the one thing that was for me. It wasn't for anyone. I will take a photo. It was for me. I will get my nails done for me. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Exactly. So those are the little things that I try to do for me.
Did you ever develop depression or anxiety because of the abuse?
I'm sure I was probably depressed, but I didn't even realize that I was. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, I knew I had anxiety. I became OCD. I was constantly cleaning. I always put other people before me. Saying no was hard for me. You just go through the motions. So basically, all you're trying to do is survive, right? Because you know the cycle of abuse. You know after the tension phase, there comes the event, that whatever that will happen, and then they will come and apologize and love bomb you, and then the tension building starts again. So you understand the cycle. So you're basically walking on eggshells all the time, and you're just trying to live as much as possible to do things that you feel like will not let another episode come on. So you are just cruising. And you know when you do those things, these things happen. You are just operating on the cycle. It's just emotions. You're just going through the motions and never really stopping to think. You know? So that's it for me.
So if you maybe try and think about it, what issues do you think they were going through, or how do you think maybe they grew up that made them like that?
I mean, it's possible that it's issues from childhood. Like I said, we have a choice. I grew up in an abusive home, right? I could have decided that the way my dad treated my mom, I was never going to be given or loving or caring. Because if you do that, then they will take advantage of you. But I didn't make that choice because I knew it was wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I always say that regardless of everything that happens, you do have a choice. It's up to you to decide that I will be this person or that person. Right?
Yeah.
We use the excuse of, oh, everybody reacts differently. But it's a choice. It's a choice.
So
especially when you say you care about someone and the thing is affecting them. Won't you stop to fix it? You just choose not to because you know you can get away with it.
So let's talk about therapy.
Yes.
How did you get into therapy? Did you look for it yourself, or did somebody suggest that you get into therapy?
No, I mean, so basically it came with growth, reading, learning, and realizing that, you know what, on the surface, everything may look okay, but deep down, patterns have been created, because you also find that somebody will go through abuse and will meet another abusive person because they don't know better. The patterns are there. Do you understand what I'm saying? So then for me, in learning and understanding everything, all the books suggest it's important to go to therapy. So I decided to look for a therapist. And then I, started. Initially, it was just the same patterns. Because it's something you become accustomed to. So when they ask you questions, you talk about everyone else but yourself. You don't deal with why you are the way you are and why those things happen to you. So, yeah, that's how I got into therapy. The need to heal and understand. And I was looking for answers. And therapy obviously gives answers. So,
what was your first session like?
Well, how did I grow up? What were the choices? How did the choices at home make me feel? How did it affect me? And then it goes all back. Like I said, my father would say, you're just like your mom. So you forget everything else and you're just trying to prove that you are a good person. You're not like them. You don't deserve to be criticized. You don't deserve to be hurt. You get what I'm saying? Because you can see that your mom is trying her best. And so you are just following those patterns. You get me? Exactly. And I didn't even realize it. So I went into therapy and I had to ask myself why I do the things I do. And it's self-introspection. If you're not ready to look inward, you will not find answers.
Yeah. Do you feel like your therapist understands you?
Oh, yeah, I do. She understands me.
Okay.
And she's pointed me in the right directions and she's giving me the right tools. I know people have had horror stories with therapists, and I always say that sometimes, there's a difference between having a certification and then going through the situation yourself. Because when somebody goes through the situation, their understanding of it is. So for me, my first point of call in trying to find help was joining networks where they themselves had been through the mill and had healed. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I got into recovered. I followed Dr. Diane Landberg. I followed because I'm a Christian, and so I wanted to understand what God says on abuse, because there's no clear, but in the Bible, God is not silent on abuse at all. He's very explicit about it. But they actually, pastors and the church tend to go more with the forgive the person, thereby putting responsibility back on the victim, a victim who's already broken, a victim who's already messed up and looking for answers. They are now burdened with them not finding healing for themselves, but trying to heal their abuser. So then the cycle starts again, So I was looking for answers, literally.
Okay. Did you have any misconceptions about therapy going in?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. Maybe because I have read a lot and I understood what it meant. Therapy is not for mental issues are not because somebody is mad or anything. It could just be patterns that have been created and behaviors that they've adapted to survive based on the environment within which they are. So then therapy helps you to identify what those patterns are and to ask yourself, what can I do better? How does that make me feel when I do this? How does that make me feel when someone says this to me? Is this a trigger for me? So it helps you to identify the things that trigger you and the things that make you do the things you do so that you can make better choices. For me, that's how I see therapy is. But of course, there are different forms of therapy. Therapy that someone will get if they've been through abuse. Therapy that someone will get if they've been through trauma. Therapy that someone will get when they have real psychotic issues are different. right? But if you don't approach a mental health person, how would you know the kind of help you need?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's just it.
So what have you learned in therapy that you can do to heal?
So obviously, having expectations of myself, putting my needs first. Basically, if it's not about me, I don't need to react. And then I also have to I've understood that people react based on off of what they think and perceive. It's got nothing to do with me. So when people are going off or blowing up a steam, I just walk away because it's not about me. It's not my circus. I'm not going to get involved because I'm not going to allow somebody's perceptions be projected on me and come and disturb my peace. Because my peace is very important to me right now. I need my peace. So that's it. I ask myself, how does this affect me? How does this make me better? I just want to be peaceable with everyone. If it's not something, and if I create a boundary and the person feels like they can't stay beyond that boundary, well, they don't need to be in my life. Because the boundary has to be about me. In the past, I set my boundaries based on people's expectations of me. Now I set my boundaries based on my own expectations of people and how I want my life to go. You get it?
Yeah. So what have you learned about yourself in therapy?
Oh, quite a lot. That I'm an extremely giving person. I can still give. And I used to have no expectations of people. But then I realized that, okay, you should have expectations. But then you also have to understand that you should have boundaries as well. And then it's self-respect to have expectations of people. Because if I don't have any expectations of people and I'm giving of myself to someone, then it means I don't have any respect for myself. Right? And it was something that I even didn't think it was there, but it was. You know? So then you just put the boundaries in place and then you live for yourself there. You know, the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself, no more than yourself. The boundaries that I was setting were for the other people to be better off and to my own detriment. But that's not what God asked of me, you know?
Now, almost without exception, women report that their pastors are focused on getting them to change their minds about leaving the situation, not their abusive husbands to change, because what they are doing is they are telling you, oh, you know what, we'll speak to him, we'll get him to stop this, but can you go back into that space? Forgetting that, one, the space that you're going back into has caused you trauma, has caused you pain, has caused you so much. You know, I talked about post-stress traumatic disorder, and all those things, the flashbacks, the pain, are exactly in those spaces, right? So you're asking the person, go back into the space where you're almost dying. Hello?
So speaking about the Bible, do you think abused women should seek help in church?
If the church doesn't understand what trauma is, they will further traumatize the woman. Unless they have a trauma-based response, and that's what I'm striving for. That churches will understand. You see, issues when it comes to abuse are not abuse and a difficult marriage are two different things, right? Abuse is one person deliberately using control, manipulation, and power to enforce control over their victim. Now, a bad marriage could be anything like, I don't like you to wear orange, or I don't like to put my shoes here, or I don't like to put my bag here, or that kind of thing. There's a difference. So marriage counseling is totally different from when somebody comes to say, my husband is constantly raping me, or constantly slapping me, or constantly verbally abusing me, or dehumanizing me. Right? At that point, the question is, why is the spouse doing that? So the spouse, clearly both of them need therapy because both of them will have been traumatized. And the person who is using their power needs therapy to understand what it means to use power. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not sure the church understands, because the first thing they do is say things like, what would Jesus do? Forgive the person, go back and pray more, be a loving, submissive wife. It don't matter what you do. Once the person is abusive, they are abusers. And even being submissive can result in being abused.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You can never tell where the abuse is going to come from. So their approach, domestic abuse, has been, they say it's on the pulpit, but when it comes to what is on the ground for action to be taken, it's a totally different U-turn. But God is not a God of injustice. Abuse is injustice. You know, abuse is treachery. Abuse is just control and evil. And God doesn't support that. That's why he says in Malachi, if you read about, you know, the scripture that says God hates divorce, it's not said in isolation. When you read the whole chapter, it starts from God telling them that you've done this. And then when it gets to verse 12 and 13, he says, you are mourning about why I am not listening to your prayer. Are you mourning? Like, are you really mourning about why I'm not listening to your prayer? Listen, you who deal with your wife in a treacherous manner, you want me to listen to your prayers? I will not listen. For I, the Lord your God, I hate divorce. Now, the indication is that immediately you are treating your wife in a treacherous manner. What does treachery mean? Hitting your wife is treachery. Insulting her is treachery. Withholding affection is treachery. Gaslighting is treachery. Lying on her is treachery. You understand what I'm saying? So God is saying that immediately you do these things to your wife, I consider the marriage broken. The marriage confidence broken. That's why I'm not listening to your prayers. It's not about the impending divorce. God is saying that for I, the Lord your God, I hate divorce. So once treachery comes into the marriage, there's a divorce. But then immediately pastors use that script. God hates divorce, so divorce is not an option. Divorce is an option. When you look in Hebrew, you follow Hebrew culture, it was there, and God was saying he didn't want them to just divorce their wives because some men will use their wives and then give them nothing. So for them to be able to be free and to realize that they could go on with their life, they needed to be issued a certificate. If you read Hebrew history, and so it's not a sin.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's not. Yes.
Okay. So I was just going to ask.
I really had to do my research well. I had to read a lot of books. I mean, I have tons of books on my shelf about abuse and the Bible and Christ and all of that. It's not a subject that pastors really go into, because I say that marriage has become a god in the church. It's become one of the fundamental things of, we have so and so couples, but ultimately, if the health and the mental health of anyone in the marriage is not working, then the marriage is not, they are together but it's a failure. So it's just numbers, you know?
Yeah. So I was going to ask if your faith has been affected by how the church has dealt with abuse, but you don't seem...
No,
okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they don't know any better. That's what I'll say. They don't know any better because it's just a myth that has been perpetrated by patriarchy and things that have been said over and over again, so it has become accepted. Right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, if they will, that's why I am advocating for a change in how it is dealt with. And so, but the thing is, I won't want to be in that space because they don't understand. So my faith is constant. If it wasn't for God, I don't know what I would have done. God has kept me, you know.
Yeah.
So my relationship with God and my faith is not affected at all. Even not for anything, it's become stronger and bold and better.
Okay.
Because that was all I had.
So, how do you know when you've healed? Do you feel you've healed, or are you like in the process of healing?
Oh, I am in the process of healing because you see, the thing is, you will not be the same person that you were again because, like I said, the experience has come. For instance, I had to go on a strategy retreat a couple of days ago, and a friend of mine paid for me, and she told me that she had sponsored me for a strategy retreat, and I was super excited about it. Now, the next minute, I got anxious because in the past, when I have had to go somewhere it had caused a lot of problems for me. And so immediately my mind identifies the fact that I'm going somewhere. I'm anxious. So I just breathe and I say, you know what, this is about you. This is about doing something for yourself. Relax. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone. And is this good for you? Is this a good decision that you're taking? So that's how the healing is for me. Instead of worrying about it and struggling about it, what healing does for me is it helps me to bring it into perspective and to do what's good for me.
So have you talked about it with your children?
Yes, they are in therapy with me.
Oh.
They also meet the therapist. Yes.
Okay.
So it was important for me for them to do that.
So when you talk about it, like how would a mother go about talking about her experience with her children?
It's difficult. So because then you don't want them to feel like you're reporting a parent to them. That's why I got the therapist. So I explained to them that you saw what happened. This is not normal. It's not the right thing that should be happening. They understand that it's not the right thing that should be happening. That's why we are talking to the therapist. So I care about you. I need you to release any emotions that you feel so we can deal with it and grow and heal. So yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Do they ask you questions? And what do they ask?
Oh, they don't.
Okay.
I feel like they just want you to be better. So when they get anxious, for instance, if I'm too quiet, oh, mommy, why are you quiet? Are you okay? They ask me questions because they feel like they need to keep an eye on me. You know, maybe there's something bothering me, something has happened, and I don't want them to feel that way. So yeah.
So if someone has recognized that they're being abused, what steps should they take? Where should they start?
So for me, it's important to documentation, because abusers will always deny what they've done. So it's important to document them without knowing, because you have to be able to identify the fact that it's a pattern, right? If you're unable to identify that it's a pattern, you can't prove anything. And then in documenting, you need to have finances as well, and then have an escape plan. If they are trying to threaten your life, you need to understand, you have a plan, a bag somewhere where you go, where you know that you can find some peace, you know, and then have some money that they are unaware of, and then look for support. If you can even start doing therapy while you are there, it helps. Yeah, to read. Everybody's story might be different, but the experiences are the same. So you find strength and healing and, you know, purpose from other people's story. And pray. Pray because God will give you the strength. But do the work that will help you, you know, make decisions that are good for you. Because if you don't know any better, you cannot do any better. Yeah. You get what I mean? So you need to know. That's why it's important to read and learn and understand. If you understand the tension building cycle and the cycle of abuse, you know when it's about to happen. So even though it doesn't lessen the pain, you understand what is happening. You also need to know who you tell your story to. Not everybody is listening to your story because they want to help you. That is very important to be discerning about who you are telling your story to. And what they want out of it. Because it doesn't help to be recounting the story to people who are not helping you. Because telling the story in itself is draining.
So if you had to look at it from the other side, like how does someone recognize that they're an abuser? Like what habits and what behaviors do they have?
They know. They know. It's just a matter of control, right? So, for instance, they don't want you to talk to so and so. They say little things that annihilate you from your family. They dictate when you meet your friends and who are your friends and who you talk to. It's little things, and they count it under we are building our family. So by the time you realize you don't have anyone to speak to, and you are just there because they did it slowly, but it happens. And then they love bomb you. They are quick to say, I'm good for you. and the best thing that should have happened to you and that kind of thing. It's very subtle. Sometimes you might not even see it happening. That's why everyone needs to be educated, you know. But the abuser knows, because they know it's an act and they are drawing you in. And sometimes they see the good in you, and they see, especially empaths, you're accepting of everyone, you care about everyone. And they tell you tales about how their exes were difficult, both male and female. There are female abusers who manipulate men into, you know, with sob stories and all of those things. So it's everybody needs to get educated. I did an episode about green flags. If you know what's good for you, and you know, you will be able to tell when there's something of an intuition. Your intuition can never go wrong. Sometimes your intuition tells you, but you feel like, oh, well, I can do it. I can work with it. It's fine, you know. So it's difficult to say, and to say they come wearing a mask until the mask will fall off. You can't tell.
Oh, okay. I think we are going to change the gears now. Can you talk about how your 2020 is going?
Oh, 2020. I mean, it's obviously turned everyone's life upside down, but it's also been one of my progressive years, because it's helped me to study a lot, read a lot, and, you know, kind of giving me clarity in some of the things that I want to do. I'm building my website. I'm trying to establish a business. You know, little things. So I also want to do an abuse recovery program. And then the thing is, I believe that relationships are beautiful. I believe that love is a beautiful thing. I believe that there are good, healthy relationships that can be nurtured and built, right? A lot of people just get into relationships and expect the relationship to grow. But if you don't nurture it, like anything else, it will wilt and die, you know? So I want to help people build healthy relationships and boundaries, you know, and guide them through the processes. I believe it's a calling I have. It's taking me a while. It's been something that I've been doing on the sidelines, but I believe it's something I have, a gift I have. And then with the experiences and everything that I have, I can also build people up. And one of my major dreams is to have SCT for victims of abuse to come to and, you know, have some me time, like I said, polish their nails, even if it's a school, a shelter. So everything that I'm doing is gearing towards philanthropy, because I want to be able to give back from the experiences that I have had.
An open letter to South African men. Dear men, let's be honest. Abuse is our most fluent language. We speak it, translate it, and teach it better than any other language. We use it to communicate hurt, love, and desire. We have been shown to think that a no from a woman is not her final decision, but an invitation to use force and convince her. The only shared experience across suburbia and rural South Africa is abuse. Whether you're watching Real Housewives or Isibaya, you know abuse. Whether you frequent the golf course or the local shebeen, you know abuse. Physical hurt, verbal harm, emotional scars, psychological traumas, name it. We are ungraduated doctors in the administration of this vile medicine. The truth is that many of us think that abuse is a form of love language. So here is the uncomfortable truth. We have been taught abuse so well that we ourselves have become professors in the school of violence. Our entire culture is filled with expressions that perpetuate this idea of the man as a dominator. Our society teaches us to man up when dealing with life stresses. We speak about our women in a toxic possessive reflex. Our uncles teach us to be a man when your partner challenges your authority. Our churches teaches us that the man is the head of the home, without showing that the head of the house must build that home. not destroy it. We are taught that if your partner is not doing as she is told, you have the right to beat her. Everything we have been taught to us, guided by our friends, our communities, our elders, sometimes even by women in our lives who themselves believe abuse is love. But using this crush as an excuse is not good enough. It's time that we change ourselves. Our parents are complicit too. Our mothers are often the first to tell tigers don't cry. Our fathers teach us never to show fear, never show hurt, never show weakness, and meet all situations of conflict with violence and senseless mental depravity. Heck, if you want to trend on Twitter, threaten another man with violence as you peacock your testosterone in the theater of commons, and both the men and women will celebrate you. The tragic irony of social media outrage is that many of those that rightfully stand against gender-based violence ignorantly encourage violence amongst men, not realizing that normalized violence is the first step to gender-based violence. We cannot deal with the scourge of gender-based violence until we deal with our society's obsession with violence as a conflict resolution mechanism. Ladies, the painful truth is this: all men are abusers, all of us. Even if we haven't abused a woman ourselves, we know a man that has, and we do not correct nor did we report the abuse. All men enjoy the financial and career privilege of being a man in a society that stands on the talents and ambitions of women. Women who have been put in her place by other men. We are all guilty. To deal with this guilt, we must name and shame the abuser and his supporters. We name and shame the ecosystem of complicity that allows abuse to continue. We must name and shame the family members, aunts and uncles, friends and colleagues that negotiate women back into abusive relationships. Abuse only exists when society allows it to hide in the shadows. Today, shine a light wherever you find that abuse. Now, do not go back to your regular scheduled program. So guys, that is an article I found on Medium written by Vusi. I'm sure I'm butchering his second name. Oh my god. But if you don't know him, he is like a famous entrepreneur from South Africa, and he gives really good talks and classes on entrepreneurship. You should check him out. But I will also link this article in the show notes. You can check it out later if you want. This week's recommendation is, of course, the podcast Conversations with Amma. I will link it in the show notes. Please go listen. She has also done an episode on toxic positivity. The other recommendation this week is a guy called Vaknin, who has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, and he does YouTube videos on narcissists and narcissism from the point of the perpetrator and not from the point of the victim. So if this is a topic that interests you, you might want to check him out. Thank you so much, Amma, for coming on the podcast. Guys, go listen to her podcast. It's really interesting and it's really informative and educative. What's the word? But go listen to her podcast. So guys, that's the episode. Thank you for listening, and bye.